The night was supposed to be the pinnacle of my life, a moment etched into eternity. I knelt on one knee in front of hundreds of people at an extravagant gala, the flash of cameras blinding me like 1,000 tiny suns exploding in my face. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear the soft music playing in the background. I held out the diamond ring, a symbol of everything I thought we had, and looked up at her, expecting tears of joy. Instead, her lips curled into a cruel smirk and she laughed. Not a joyful laugh, but one that echoed through the silent hall like the crack of thunder. "You selfish fool," she said, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "I could never love someone as self-centered as you." The room seemed to freeze, the air thick with disbelief. People stopped breathing, their champagne glasses suspended midair. Even the music felt subdued, as if it too was mourning the death of my dreams. Without another word, she turned on her heel, leaving the ring on the table beside me. As she walked away, her heels clicking against the marble floor like a countdown to my humiliation, I sat there, paralyzed, staring at the glittering diamond that now felt like a shard of broken glass piercing my soul. The crowd erupted into whispers, their eyes judging me, their faces masks of pity and disdain. That night, I didn't just lose her. I lost myself. The aftermath of the disastrous proposal left me in a state of disarray. But little did I know that my troubles were only just beginning. As I stumbled back into my apartment, clutching the cursed ring like it was a venomous snake, my mind raced with thoughts of how everything had spiraled so uncontrollably out of hand. But then, amidst the chaos of self-pity and despair, something caught my eye. A dusty folder on the coffee table. It contained documents detailing transactions from an offshore account, remnants of a business deal gone wrong years ago. Panic surged through me as I realized these papers could implicate me in something far worse than heartbreak. International money laundering. I grabbed the folder, my hands trembling violently, and rushed to the fireplace. The flames licked hungrily at the edges of the paper, but before they could fully consume the incriminating evidence, a sharp knock echoed through the room. My blood froze. Before I could react, the door burst open and two stern-looking police officers stepped inside, their badges gleaming ominously under the dim light. "Good day, sir," one of them said curtly. "We need to ask you some questions." Their presence felt suffocating, like walls closing in around me. They wasted no time getting straight to the point. "Where's the money?" the taller officer demanded, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. I stammered, sweat pouring down my face as if every word might seal my fate. Money? What money?" I managed to choke out, trying desperately to mask my panic. But my efforts were futile. One of them pulled out a document, a bank statement showing a massive withdrawal from Blend AR, a name that sent shivers down my spine. "That's your signature, isn't it?" he pressed, thrusting the paper toward me. My vision blurred. I felt lightheaded as though the ground beneath me was crumbling away. This wasn't just about the failed engagement anymore. It was about survival. The officers exchanged knowing glances, their expressions grim. "We believe you're involved in a high-profile case of international money laundering," the second officer added coldly. "And unless you cooperate, this is going to get very messy for you." My knees buckled and I collapsed onto the couch, clutching my head in disbelief. How had things escalated so quickly? Just hours ago, I was planning a future with the woman I loved, or thought I did. And now I was being interrogated by the police over crimes I barely understood. The irony hit me hard. The same wealth I once dreamed would secure my happiness was now threatening to destroy me entirely. Their accusations hung heavy in the air, each word a hammer blow against my already fragile psyche. Look, I don't know what you're talking about, I protested weakly. Though even I didn't believe my own words, the officers weren't convinced either. Save it for the station, the taller one snapped, pulling out handcuffs. For a moment, I considered running, but where would I go? There was nowhere to hide. Not from the law, not from myself. Defeated, I sat there, watching as my life unraveled before my eyes. If only I hadn't let greed cloud my judgment. If only I had been honest. But regrets wouldn't save me now. Not when the world seemed determined to make me pay for my sins. The weight of the police interrogation still lingered in my mind as I wandered aimlessly through the streets, trying to escape the suffocating grip of guilt and fear. My life had become a chaotic web of accusations, regrets, and shattered dreams. But just when I thought things couldn't get worse, fate decided to throw another curveball my way. One that would leave me questioning whether this was punishment or some twisted cosmic joke. It started innocently enough. Desperate for a distraction, I stumbled into a thrift store, its dimly lit aisles filled with forgotten treasures and discarded memories. Among the clutter, a dusty old coat caught my eye. It wasn't particularly stylish, but something about it seemed oddly familiar, as if it belonged to someone I once knew. Without thinking too much, I handed over a few dollars and left with the coat slung over my shoulder. Back at my apartment, I tossed the coat onto the couch and began rummaging through its pockets, half expecting to find nothing more than lint and loose buttons. But then my fingers brushed against something unexpected, a thick wad of cash. My heart skipped a beat as I pulled it out and counted $3,000 in crisp bills. For a moment, the world stood still. Was this some kind of miracle? A chance to turn my fortunes around after everything that had gone wrong? But before I could even begin to process what this meant, there was a loud knock on the door. Startled, I shoved the money into my pocket and hesitated before answering. Standing outside was a man who looked like he'd stepped straight out of a crime drama. Sunglasses, leather jacket, and an unmistakable air of menace. In his hand, he held what appeared to be a fake gun, but it was convincing enough to send chills down my spine. "Where's my money?" he growled, pushing past me into the apartment. His eyes darted around the room, landing on the coat lying innocently on the couch. "You found it, didn't you?" I stammered, trying to play dumb. "What are you talking about? I don't have your money." He smirked, stepping closer. "Don't act innocent. That jacket used to be mine. And guess what? I accidentally left something valuable inside." Before I could respond, he lunged toward me, grabbing at my pocket where I'd hidden the cash. Panic surged through me as we struggled, both of us grappling for control. The money slipped from my grasp, scattering across the floor like confetti. Bills fluttered everywhere, catching the attention of neighbors who peeked curiously through their doors. Within moments, a small crowd had gathered, their whispers growing louder as they watched the spectacle unfold. "Give it back!" the man shouted, shoving me hard against the wall. My head hit with a dull thud, sending stars dancing across my vision. I tried to reason with him, explaining that I hadn't known the money was his, but he wasn't listening. All he cared about was retrieving what he believed was rightfully his. As the tension escalated, one of the bystanders, a middle-aged woman clutching her purse tightly, stepped forward. "Enough!" she exclaimed, her voice cutting through the chaos. "This isn't solving anything. Just give him the money." Her words struck a nerve. Realizing I had no choice but to comply, I bent down and hastily gathered the scattered bills, shoving them into the man's outstretched hands. He snatched them away, glaring at me one last time before storming out of the apartment. The crowd dispersed slowly, leaving me alone in the aftermath of the ordeal. Sinking onto the couch, I buried my face in my hands, overwhelmed by a mix of shame and frustration. What had I done to deserve this? First, the failed proposal, then the police interrogation, and now this. A cruel reminder that luck was not on my side. As I sat there, staring blankly at the empty space where the coat had been, I couldn't help but wonder if these events were somehow connected. Was this karma punishing me for my greed and selfishness? Or was this merely the beginning of something far darker? The chaos of the past few days had left me emotionally battered and physically drained. Between the disastrous proposal, the police interrogation, and the surreal encounter over the stolen money in the coat, I felt like life was conspiring against me at every turn. My mind was a storm of desperation, each thought crashing into the next with no clear path forward. That's when he appeared. A man cloaked in darkness, his presence as unsettling as it was mysterious. It happened late one night when I was wandering aimlessly through the city, my thoughts tangled in regrets and unanswered questions. A figure emerged from the shadows, draped in a long black cloak, his face obscured by a hood that seemed to swallow the dim light around him. He moved silently, almost gliding toward me, and stopped just a few feet away. "You look troubled," he said, his voice low and smooth, carrying an eerie calmness that sent shivers down my spine. "I don't have time for games," I snapped, my frustration boiling over. But something about him kept me rooted to the spot. Maybe it was the way his eyes gleamed beneath the hood, or maybe it was the sheer absurdity of the situation. Either way, I couldn't bring myself to walk away. He chuckled softly, tilting his head slightly. "Games? No, my friend. I deal in wishes. 3 of them, to be exact." His words hung in the air, heavy with promise and danger. For a moment, I thought I was hallucinating. A man who grants wishes? It sounded ridiculous, like something out of a bad movie. But then again, hadn't my life become a series of increasingly bizarre events? "What's the catch?" I asked warily, crossing my arms. His smile widened, revealing teeth that seemed unnervingly sharp. "Every wish comes with a price, of course. The greater the desire, the steeper the cost. Are you willing to pay?" I hesitated, torn between skepticism and desperation. What did I have to lose? My bank account was empty, my reputation tarnished, and my future bleak. If this stranger could truly grant me my heart's desires, perhaps it was worth the risk. "Fine," I said finally, my voice trembling despite my attempt to sound confident. "I want my money back. The thousands I lost because of that cursed coat." The man raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. "Bold choice for your first wish. Very well." He snapped his fingers, and suddenly the weight of the world seemed lighter. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a wad of cash. Real money this time. Not counterfeit or misplaced bills. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. As we stood there, the man leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Your second wish?" Caught up in the euphoria of having my money returned, I didn't think twice. "I want to erase the memory of that humiliating proposal from everyone's minds. Make it so no one remembers what happened." He smirked, his expression unreadable. "As you wish." With another snap of his fingers, the tension in my chest eased slightly. I imagined people forgetting the scene at the gala, the cruel laughter, the pitying stares. It felt liberating. Until I realized something was off. Over the next few hours, strange things began to happen. Conversations looped endlessly, familiar faces became unrecognizable, and even my own reflection in the mirror seemed distorted. Panic set in as I realized the full extent of the bargain I'd made. Each wish wasn't just altering reality, it was unraveling it, pulling me deeper into a vortex of uncertainty and fear. When I confronted the man later, demanding answers, he simply laughed, a cold, mirthless sound that echoed in the night. "You should have read the fine print," he mocked. "Two wishes gone and only one remains. Choose wisely because the price will be higher than you can imagine." After narrowly escaping the clutches of the mysterious wish granter and realizing the devastating consequences of my first two wishes, I found myself spiraling further into chaos. My life had become a tangled web of misfortune, each event more surreal than the last. Exhausted both physically and emotionally, I decided to treat myself to a rare moment of indulgence. A meal at an upscale restaurant. It was supposed to be a brief respite from the madness, but little did I know that this simple act would plunge me into yet another absurd ordeal. The ambiance of the restaurant was elegant, with soft piano music drifting through the air and the faint clinking of silverware against fine china. I ordered a modest dish, hoping it would provide some semblance of comfort. As I savored the flavors, I allowed myself to momentarily forget the turmoil that had consumed my life. But when the bill arrived, reality came crashing back down on me like a ton of bricks. Reaching into my wallet, I pulled out what I believed to be real currency. However, as I handed the money to the waiter, his expression shifted from polite professionalism to outright disbelief. "Sir," he said sharply, holding up one of the bills, "this is souvenir money?" His voice carried across the room, drawing curious glances from other patrons. Mortified, I quickly scanned the bill and realized the horrifying truth. I had accidentally used counterfeit money, remnants of a prank gone wrong months ago. Before I could explain, the manager stormed over, his face red with anger. "Do you think this is some kind of joke?" he bellowed, slamming the fake bills onto the table. "We're calling the police." Panic surged through me as I stammered, trying to defend myself. "Please, sir, let me explain. I didn't mean to deceive anyone. My voice cracked under the weight of desperation. The manager cut me off, yelling about lawsuits and criminal charges. The entire restaurant fell silent, their eyes fixed on me like vultures circling prey. In that moment, overwhelmed by shame and exhaustion, I broke down. Tears streamed down my face as I blurted out the truth. "My son is gravely ill," I choked out between sobs. "My wife left us, and I haven't eaten in 3 days. I wasn't thinking straight. I didn't know this was fake money." The words tumbled out uncontrollably, revealing the depth of my despair. For weeks, I had been drowning in a sea of personal failures and external pressures. And now, even something as basic as paying for a meal had turned into a catastrophe. The manager's stern expression softened slightly, though suspicion still lingered in his eyes. "You expect me to believe this sob story?" he asked skeptically. But then, almost imperceptibly, his gaze flickered to the pile of fake bills on the table. Perhaps he saw the genuine anguish etched on my face, or perhaps he simply pitied the broken man before him. Whatever the reason, after a long pause, he sighed deeply. "Fine," he said gruffly, "but you'll work here washing dishes for a week to make up for it." Relief washed over me, though it was bittersweet. I nodded vigorously, too grateful to argue. As I followed him to the kitchen, I couldn't help but reflect on how far I had fallen. Once a man who dreamed of wealth and success, I was now reduced to scrubbing plates to pay for a single meal. Yet, amidst the humiliation, there was a strange sense of clarity. Every misstep, every mistake seemed to be teaching me a harsh lesson about humility and accountability. The final wish was supposed to be my redemption, the ultimate solution to all my problems. After everything I had endured, the failed proposal, the police interrogations, the cursed money in the coat, and the humiliating stint as a dishwasher, I clung to the hope that this last wish would finally set me free. I want to be the richest person in the world, I declared with trembling conviction, my voice echoing in the dimly lit room where the mysterious man stood cloaked in shadows. He smirked, his eyes gleaming with an unsettling mix of amusement and malice. As you wish, he said, snapping his fingers one final time. In an instant, my reality transformed. I found myself in a sprawling mansion, its marble floors gleaming under crystal chandeliers. Outside, a fleet of luxury cars lined the driveway, their sleek designs glistening in the sunlight. A private jet awaited on a nearby airstrip, and my bank account notifications buzzed incessantly, each message confirming billions added to my balance. For the first time in what felt like forever, I allowed myself to breathe deeply, reveling in the intoxicating illusion of invincibility. But as quickly as the wealth arrived, so did the consequences. Just 3 days later, I was summoned to a government office, accused of tax evasion on an unprecedented scale. The officials stared at me coldly, their expressions unreadable yet damning. "You are the richest person in the world," one of them stated flatly. "Yet you haven't paid a single penny in taxes." My mind raced, panic gripping me like icy hands. "I didn't know. This wasn't part of the deal." I stammered, but my protests fell on deaf ears. The trial was a spectacle, journalists and cameras flooding the courtroom as if it were a circus. When the judge entered, the room fell silent as they read out the verdict: 35 years in prison for gross negligence. I lost control. "This isn't fair," I screamed, pointing wildly at the empty space beside me. "It's his fault. That man tricked me. He never warned me about this." My voice cracked, raw with desperation. But the judge merely adjusted his glasses, his tone chillingly indifferent. "Mr. Watson, justice is blind but rarely forgiving. You had every opportunity to act responsibly. This is quite fair." As the guards dragged me away, shackles clinking ominously, I realized the cruel irony. All my life I had chased wealth, believing it would bring happiness and security. Instead, it had led me straight into a cage of my own making. The cold, damp walls of the prison cell pressed against my spirit as much as they did my body. I sat on the edge of a thin mattress, my gaunt face illuminated by the pale moonlight streaming through the iron bars. My eyes stared blankly into the void beyond, but all I could see were the ghosts of my past decisions. The failed proposal, the reckless wishes, and the crushing weight of greed. They replayed in an endless loop, each memory a knife twisting deeper into my soul. I remembered the moment I held her hand, proposing with a diamond ring that symbolized everything I thought we had. Her laughter still echoed in my ears, sharp and unrelenting, a reminder of how blind I'd been to her truth and mine. Then came the man in black, offering salvation in exchange for folly. 3 wishes, each more destructive than the last, until I was left with nothing but chains, literal and metaphorical. As faint music drifted through the air, its mocking tone felt like a cruel joke. "This is justice," the judge's voice reverberated in my mind. Justice or karma? Either way, it was undeniable. Every selfish act, every reckless choice had led me here. to this cage where dreams go to die. Some people leave scars, others leave lessons. Burn and reborn stories that break you, then rebuild you.